Welcome to ePathshala. My name is Richa and I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science in MCMDAV College, Chandigarh. Today I will discuss about the culture approach. Culture is a very comprehensive concept. The word culture has been come from the Latin word colere, which means to nurture and cultivation. Culture is a way of life and it is grown as a process. It is reflected to symbols, speeches, folklores, stories, rituals, habits, and also through the writings of the leaders and the people alike. Culture has been transmitted from one generation to the another generations. And culture opens the door and minds of the people and peeps into the mindset, attitudes, and behavior of the people and also forecast the future of the society. The nation is a cultural entity and a body of the people bind together by the sheer cultural heritage. Why study culture in politics? In an interpretation precisely published before 9/11, Huntington suggested that culture rather than countries would become the leading source of political conflict in the 21st century. The Western societies have for a long time defined culture in just two categories. One, Western culture, which is considered superior, and the other, non-Western, which is supposed to be inferior and has to be conformed to the Western culture. Non-Western culture is supposed to be restrictive, backward, and not based on reason, rational, and logic. Politics, or the politics of the West, view of itself donated reasons. Culture can lead to cooperation but can also lead to conflict. The Europeans trained themselves to rule in the name of reason, equality, freedom, and justice. The forms shifted from narrow nationalism, ideologies to civilizations and cultures in the last century. Culture can be a strong factor to bind groups even if they are spread across countries. The example of Russia extending diplomatic support to the Serbs in Yugoslavia conflict of 1990s is an example. In 2006, Russia again extended help to the citizens of Belarus as the sheer cultural ties kinship with the Russians. Even within a country, cultural influences politics. There are some values in a society that become political issues, like ban on entry of women in many religious places in India. Stem cell research, cloning, abortion rights, lifestyle choices like live-in relationship, lesbian and gay rights in some other countries, etc. Any talk of politics suppressing cultures would be a joke. Politics can influence culture, but the link would always be there. Culture would continue to influence politics, and politics would keep trying to make laws according to the cultural norms of the society. But doing the latter is a Herculean task. The example of India's during Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who considered himself a modernist, is worth analyzing. While the post-colonial state accepted the diagnosis of the colonial state, and culture in India embodied unreason and backwardness. The Nehruvian state, unlike the British Raj, moved sharply to maintain that culture could be smashed by state-directed economic modernization. One gets a broader perspective of people's background and their various interactions. Study of culture of a group helps to understand their belief, reasoning, and their lifestyle, which helps to understand their attitudes to politics. How people believe in the political system can be better understood when we understand the preconceived assumptions, attitudes, emotions, and notions of the people. The perceptions of people decide and dictates their action. The biases and prejudices of the people go a long way in participation or non-participation of the people. The thought process of the people has a direct impact on the behavior of people. The culture shapes the values and belief of people, which are passed from one generation to the other. Culture is an identity card which helps to maintain the distinctiveness of a group. It helps to iron out differences among the various members. Culture is a social reality. The effects of culture are absorbed so subtly that it is difficult to study the direct impact of culture. But the effect of culture on politics is seen in the long run, and if we scrutinized minutely, one can realize the impact. Culture contributes resources and materials which are used by the leaders to organize and also mobilize the people, various groups, and the machinery of the state. The various groups use culture in the political field to pursue goals which they otherwise would not have followed directly or would have had difficulty in following. An individual demand is often relegated to the background, but if the same demand becomes attached to many, there are more chances of greater number of people being mobilized and the demand being fulfilled. There are many formal and informal groups which focus on specific cultural practices. They become major tools to fulfill certain demands. These groups have the capacity to present the demands in various ways, for they know the bent of the majority of the members of a group. This capacity helps them to knock at the right doors and achieve their goals. Religion, region, language, color, caste, creed can mobilize people. These are all very strong emotions that can move people. These have to be taken into account by any political system while framing or making any policy. Human survival and maintenance of relations as well as their everyday actions are based on these traits. Culture is reflected in the traditions, stories, poems, and education of a society, and the later want it to be continued. A political system has to develop, but keeping in mind all these informal but very important factors. A lot of interaction takes place through all these informal factors. A lot of discussion, debates in these areas leads to not only people getting mobilized, but also the spreading of new ideas or at other time modified ideas. Problems of all hues are discussed and new facts are interpreted and reinterpreted. These informal factors are very powerful and can lead to short-term as well as long-term repercussions. Culture cannot be alienated or detached from the political system, for it is culture that helps us to understand people, and the latter are the main actors in any political system, who behave as they have been conditioned by the society in which they have taken birth and matured as adults. How culture affects politics? The most important contribution of culture is that it provides a framework, a model, an explanation for interpreting the motives of people of a group. Sometimes words might not be spoken, but action can reveal them true nature that might be concealed among layers. Culture puts emphasis on motives because they help us to understand the individual vis-a-vis the group. Motives are central to cultural analysis because they offer a mechanism to link individual action to a broader social setting. Interest can be gauged, for they are visually transparent, but motives can be seen only through empirical analysis of a particular cultural contents. Culture in developing countries has more significance because these societies are bound by culture, which encompasses traditions as well as the rituals. Culture prods people to launch movements. In many cases, violation of culture has forced people to come together to protest against the colonial regimes. The movements against apartheid in Africa or the various protests against the British in India owe their origin to the power of culture in the respective societies. It is the cultural realm in which the political activities unfold. Culture or political activities are connected. Through culture, the political system gets a better understanding as to what is valuable to the people and what is not. The political system, the leaders realize the sensitiveness of a certain aspect of culture and do not touch them. They realize that people would fight one certain issues, objects that they are considered invaluable. Culture helps the political system understand the causes behind certain conflicts, the rules, both formal and informal, by which politics takes place, and also who participate in it. In doing so, culture defines interest and how they are to be pursued. Cultural analysis also helps to link the individual's identity with the collective identity of the group of which they are members. This helps to reinforce the bond between the individual and culture, and also helps to solidify the group identity of the concerned group. The sharing and caring among members of a group is a great factor to understand why the individual and the group behave as they do. The interplay among the members of the group, the internal dynamics within a group, affect the society at large and then the political system. Though culture is a seamless and one usually assumes that it has no boundaries, yet each culture has its boundary. Various groups are linked by kinship, gender, livelihood, common past, etc., which regulates the behavior of its member as well as the group. It also helps to analyze the actions of the group when they interact with each other. The symbols, images, narratives, and events all have a direct or indirect impact on the political system. It is culture that keeps these safe. In today's contentious politics, the narratives, etc., serve the purpose of guiding the political system. It answers questions like, why are certain areas more prone to riots? Why are certain groups alienated from the system? Or why a certain group has got alienated at a particular time? And many more. Only when we study the roots that go deep into the past can we work on a blueprint for further action. Such narratives, images, etc. can serve as causes for certain action or at times restrict actions. The group passes its experience of happiness, trauma, pain to its successive generations. The Marxists, on the other hand, consider politics, culture, and law as a part of superstructure. In his view, politics together with law and culture was part of superstructure distinct from the economic base, which was the real foundation of social life. He believed that the superstructure reflected the economic base. For the Marxists, culture was also one of the factors that led to the suppression of the proletariat. Culture was also one of the gaps that helps in exploiting the workers and keeping them bound in chains. It is crucial to examine the rituals, the traditions and events of a community to understand its reaction to the events in the present. A society, inculcation and exclusion politics all have to be studied keeping in larger framework of culture in mind. Culture expressions and enactment connect groups, narratives and identity in many ways. Public ceremonials, religious ceremonies and festivals and holidays, theatrical presentations, television programs, literature, public discourse, distinctive clothing and foods and language use are some of the common ways that narratives or key part of them are enacted, communicated, reinforcing in group understanding. Culture helps to explain events in an emotional method. Of course, this leads to a lot of contentious viewpoint. Each group, each society would have its own version and it would be difficult to know what is the real picture. Yet, one could endeavor to trace the common thread running through the events. For example, in wars, partition, genocide, the common thread is the molestation, violation, and killing of women, children, and all those who are vulnerable. There is consensus on some general things. The explanation as well as the viewpoint is mutually understood. One's attitude can be real significance politically and can eliminate the way to find solutions for problems faced by any society. The various traditions habits, and rituals helps to understand the political reality. These traditions and past history bring people together. These help people to develop their political system with the advent of new ideas. They also help the society to be bound together and establish a set of priorities. Culture can at times lead to clash of societies. We have the example of the Islamic headscarves, the turban and kirpan, according to the Sikh religion, which have led not only to skirmishes in some political systems like France, United States, etc., but also to the serious conflict. One culture created confusion, especially when it was practiced in an alien land, which did not have the knowledge of the same, but which boasted or showed a willingness to adapt to new. Culture analysis helps us to frame political actions, make important strategies, and have a broader perspective. We can understand the working of political institutions better when we are familiar with the lifestyle of the people in that particular society. Culture shapes the behavior of people. The political institutions, both formal and informal, reflect the people's culture as well as that of region. Culture is usually bereft of strong, clearly demarcated boundaries. Culture in this era of technology and the global world flow into each other, though each try to keep its uniqueness. This leads to problem as well as the broadening of culture. Representation of South Asians in the government of Canada, United States, or celebrated Diwali, Gurpurv in the White House in the United States, Queen Elizabeth visit to a Gurdwara in UK on the occasion of her 90th birthday are all examples of cultural influencing politics. Going deep into another culture, exploring it and understanding is vital to broaden one's attitude. Such a study of culture would be of utmost use to many of our legislature who pride themselves as a representative of their people. Any law based on culture of the people has more chances of being accepted and less chances of its violation. A study of culture can lead to a healthy politics. So, in the end, I can conclude that by understanding the culture, it can scrutinize the behavior of the people. And obviously, by having a culture, people are emotionally attached with one another. And when they are attached with one another, they are more linked to one another. And obviously, when the change in a culture takes place, obviously it will affect the attitude of the people. And when it affects the attitude of the people, then obviously it affects the working of the political system. Because political system working is totally based upon the behavior as well as the pattern of individual. So we can say that political culture is the sum total of belief, attitudes and behavior of the people.